Well, I grew up in San Jose in a neighborhood that was heavily Latino and Vietnamese, but I went to school at these places that were dominated by white students and by very wealthy families. And so for me, it was a real shock going to college at Berkeley because I'd come from an environment that was mostly white and then reached a place that prided itself on its diversity, on its multiculturalism, and which offered me an opportunity to really discover myself in new ways, to learn much more about the history of the United States and its culture as being a place that's diverse, that was different, and that was marked by all kinds of conflicts and opportunities. And so that really marked a change in my life because it really transformed me as a student, transformed me as a person, and set me on the road to being a professor. And I think for me then, multiculturalism was really important because it broadened my horizons and it convinced me that multiculturalism is actually a reflection of the United States. I mean, some people would interpret multiculturalism as something that distorts American culture and which threatens to divide us. But I take the completely opposite view, that multiculturalism is something that can actually unite us instead. But I'm also a little bit skeptical of multiculturalism. I think a lot of people think of multiculturalism as something that will solve all the problems of difference and inequality in the United States. But things are actually much more complex than that. So in LA, for example, we have a very multicultural city, we have a very multicultural police force, we have a very multicultural set of political leaders, and yet we still have an endemic set of social and economic and cultural problems. And what that tells me is that multiculturalism is only the starting point in terms of what we need to do to address inequality and injustice in our society. When we actually look around at a place like LA, what we recognize, I think, is that the poor and the working class are diverse and different, but so are the middle class and so are the elites. So multiculturalism really characterizes all of us rather than characterizing only one portion of the population. And if we want to address things like economic inequality, then we have to acknowledge that sometimes multicultural populations can exploit other multicultural populations. And so multiculturalism just allows us to recognize cultural diversity, but doesn't necessarily allow us to address economic inequality.